tell us about the lifestyle of your your typical CNAC pilot? Like, what did you do on your downtime? I mean, was it just living for the day?
Yes. We tried to fly, get our time in by about 2 or 3 weeks. Averaged around 15, 18 trips a month. And when it was over, we always had an airplane going back and forth to Calcutta. So the guys would go back to Calcutta. They had apartments there. 2 or 3 of them would room together and so on and so forth. That's what our normal procedure would be, renting apartments in Calcutta. And of course, the young, vigorous guys that, not knowing what else to do, they all wanted with girlfriends or thing. And there were a lot of very pretty Anglo-Indian girls around there. And this is what a lot of them would do. And because they figured that this might be my last scotch and soda, my last night with a beautiful girl, tomorrow I might be a black smudge on the side of a mountain. And some of them were. So this is, I think, should be okay, and those guys should be forgiven for what they did that way. That was part of life. And, but we all did that. I was no exception. And I got to know this Maharaja of Cooch Behar very well, because I was almost like a native like he was. He was a very handsome, dark fellow. And he had a palace about 200 miles north of Calcutta. So I used to try and visit with him and go hunting. I loved hunting, tiger hunting and all the wonderful things. And sometimes I'd go up to Darjeeling in a little toy train that take you up there. So this was part of my life, and I enjoyed it. Yes, this was basically, some guys went a little too far. I mean, some of them lived with some of the prostitutes and this sort of thing, and that I didn't go for, but the normal procedure was okay. We belonged to the Calcutta Golf Club. We could play golf, and the tennis club, and the swimming club, and the famous 300 Club, a nightclub it was, and the guy played, and a lot of people were there, mostly military. And,
so. You worked hard, but you played hard. I mean, is that a general statement, or is it true?
No, that's true. Yeah, we played hard, worked hard, and spent our money. That was and we got to be known as some of that. As I said, we never knew if it would be the last flight or not. And I think there were some envious people around in the military, but when I figured it out, I said, those guys that are flying the hump for the military, if the trips were added and subtracted and get your arithmetic down, you find that they made more money per flight hour than we did. We were flying 130, 140 hours a month, but they might fly 30 hours a month or something like that. And the only problem with that was that when they did get the experience and make 40 or 50 round trips on the hump, they were given medals and sent back to some easier flying. And then a new group would come over and start all over again. But made it difficult for them. I felt sorry for them in a way, but they were great people. And what little they had, and there were many bases that they had in Assam and northern Bengal area, because some of those were now flying 4-engine airplanes. And it was much simpler for them with 4 engines. That they didn't have quite the experience that we were developing from having stayed, say, 1, 2 years, and they've just come now over to start flying now. That I felt a little bit sorry for them that they didn't have the thing. And yes, we were earning money, but we earned our money. We earned it the hard way. It wasn't given to us. And all we did know that the more trips we made, yes, we got more money. And yes, we did put more cargo across to our allies in China. And that was the objective, whether you got money or medals.
William Pauley, I think he's the first president of the CNAC Association, right? There was a quote from the first volume of the, I guess, this booklet that he was producing, and he was saying that no story about CNAC would be complete without talking about the topic of smuggling. I mean, that happened a lot, right?
Yeah.
So can you give us just
Yeah.
an idea of how ingenious some people were, or passengers were in getting things back and forth in China?
Right. There was some of that. We what we call ran the gauntlet. That is, out of Calcutta we went through customs. We get to Dinjan, we went through customs. And back in, we get come. Now, smuggling is not a nice word in anybody's language. But the guys that personally, I didn't do it. I didn't have to. I had a good job, and some of my Chinese senior guys said, Peter, we like you. I know you want to stay, and after the war, you've got a good job with us, stay, and so forth. So as the expression goes, I kept my nose clean. But yes, there were guys that did it. But to me, if you were smuggling cigarettes, toothpaste, lipstick, or whatever it is, because the people over there didn't have a thing. And why not let them have this? It wasn't really doing any harm. If it was opium, yes, string them up. But it wasn't. To me, some gold, I guess, sometimes depending on, I don't know what the exchange was, but they had that, and I believe that there was some kind of a bank deal that the Chinese people couldn't cash this money that the government had given them. I don't know the intricacies of this, but I do know that the Americans could. So the guy would take 5,000-10,000 rupees worth of whatever and take it across there. They'd give him a check for about $10,000, which was found out to be legitimate. So this, yes, there was some of that. But at the same time, the military didn't have security, go through any customs. They could go back and forth all day. But they too were smuggling. They did it. But they did it carte blanche, no custom. But I believe OSS or CIA is supposed to come and check, or FBI. But I don't think anybody did anything. If our guys did it, more power to them. I don't think there was anything wrong. They didn't hurt anything. And they were indirectly, because nobody else wanted to help the Chinese citizen, because he had no gasoline. Everyone to go anywhere, went in rickshaws. And this is the only way to get around town. So I have no compulsion saying that it was a bad thing. No.
Yes, it seems like a lot of the CNAC guys moved on and became very successful businessmen. Can you give us some examples? Like Roy Farrell? I mean, just...
well, just take the obvious one, which is like Captain Roy Farrell. He was assigned to me, and I checked him out there towards the end of 1943. We became very good friends. He's a terrific golfer. And so I learned a lot of golf from him on the golf course. But he was a promoter and talker, and he liked this, that, and the other thing. Eventually, he and I rented an apartment together and got along just fine. I presume, maybe, I think so, that he did some smuggling. I don't know. He never mentioned anything like that to me, but that was it. And then when the end of the war came, he went back. He said, I'm going to start, get an oil well in Texas. He's from Texas. He's a Texas man. So he left. And Sid Kantzow, the Australian, moved in with me and shared my apartment. And got along just fine. We used to go 300, but he was a great spender too, and a lot of fun. And we spent a lot of time at Cooch Behar and introduced all these people, and did a lot of tiger hunting. We enjoyed it, great stuff. A lot of our CNAC guys came out to. And then, end of the war, Sid and I would spend a lot of time in Chongqing, and we fly from Chongqing, Nanking, Shanghai, because now we're changing the capital from Chongqing back to Nanking. So we're hauling diplomats and all kinds of people back to these two big cities, Nanking and Shanghai. And on one of our trips, Sid and I were in the Cathay Hotel. And we went to the, Sid loved his scotch, said, let's go to the bar. So we went in the bar. Who was there? Roy Farrell. What are you doing here? He said, I want to talk to you guys. He said, I changed my mind. I went back there. I bought an airplane back in the States, C-47. I filled it up, all kinds of loot. I've got this apartment up here in the hotel, and I'm selling all this stuff and probably pay for the airplane. He said, I'm going to open up a company up here and call it Roy Farrell Export Import. He said, I want you guys to put up $5,000, $10,000 and join me. But now I found I was high in seniority, and they're going to put me on DC-4s. And as I said, the Chinese people liked me and wanted me to stay on, and I think so. I said, I'll buy. But Sid went with him, and they flew, and they got this airplane, and they would fly to Hong Kong and then all the way down to Australia. And Sid's brother is a customs guy down there, and they take bicycles back and silk going down, and they were doing well. They got another airplane. So on one flight I had nothing to do. I went with Roy down to Hong Kong and back and thing. But then the problems were rising in Shanghai, China, about Mao coming around, and they got all shook up, and they said, let's move to Hong Kong. So they moved their base to Hong Kong. But the British said, you have to form a company. You can't just operate. So they sat around, and I think it was Jingles or some place down there on Nathan Road. And finally said, one guy, an English guy said, I think I have an answer for your airline. How's that? Why don't you call it Cathay Pacific Airways? That's when it was born. And they made a fortune. But then Americans couldn't have interest or fly or something. I don't know what the intricacies were. So Roy quit and went back there in 1949, back to the States, and did get his oil wells going. Sid stayed till 1953, 55, and he quit and to Australian Airlines or somebody, and went down to Sydney, and driving in the car, he was in an accident and got killed. Roy lived for quite a number of years. I used to see him often. And he did very well in that. There were others. There's some guys that went and had cattle farms in Georgia. Some had cattle farms in Nebraska and all over the place. Various people. A guy went and opened restaurants in Florida. But people like me, as I said to a lot of people, I got tangled up in my underwear, love affairs and marriages, and lost everything. That was my success.